Morning, Dan and Amy. Well. Isn't this interesting? That's what happens with open-ended investigations. You don't quite know where they're going to go. The argument against the special prosecutor, Bob Mueller, special prosecutor in general, with respect to Russian collusion in the first place. But wouldn't it be fascinating if the Clintons and the Obama regime were hoist by their own petard? Both the House and Senate investigating whether former President Obama's administration used intelligence intelligence, quote unquote, in the salacious Trump dossier. The Trump dossier that was full of conjecture that was unfounded, certainly unsubstantiated. Using the Trump dossier as, quote unquote, evidence to get a FISA court warrant to surveil Trump campaign aides, dumbing up the dossier to get a real court order that allowed them to surveil the Trump campaign using the deep state for political purposes. We still have open questions about all of Samantha Power's unmasking requests and Susan Rice and who initiated or financed the compilation of the Trump dossier. Oh, by the way, on to that point, the Fusion GPS, which is the company that was behind the Trump dossier, invoked their Fifth Amendment privilege during a meeting with House Intelligence Committee on Wednesday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. To every question asked of them. They're not anxious to be fully transparent. Does that create any questions? This against the backdrop of the news this week that Jim Comey, the FBI director at the time, had the exculpatory statement for Hillary Clinton months before the Clinton email investigation was complete. That's highly unusual, isn't it? Attorney General Jeff Sessions thinks so. He testified to that fact yesterday before Senate Judiciary Committee.
Senator Feinstein, I don't think it's been fully understood the significance of the error that Mr. Comey made on the Clinton matter. For the first time I'm aware of in all of my experience, and I don't think I've heard of a situation in which a major case in which the Department of Justice prosecutors were involved in an investigation, that the investigative agency announces the closure of the investigation. And then a few weeks before this happened, he was testifying before the Congress, Mr. Comey was, and he said he thought he did the right thing and would do it again. So the Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, who's got, 27 years in the Department of Justice, Harvard graduate, served for 8 years as U.S. Attorney under President Obama and 4 years under President Bush. He said that was a usurpation of the position of the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's position, and that particularly we were concerned that he reaffirmed that he would do it again.
Yeah, and that doesn't even get to the other Russian scandal, which was talked about thanks to Peter Schweizer's work in Clinton Cash at the outset of the campaign, and now is being resuscitated because of the news this week that Uranium One, this Russian-backed company that got a 20% stake in the American nuclear materials extraction, there was a bribery plot the FBI uncovered before the Obama administration approved that deal with Uranium One. Uranium One backed by Clinton Foundation donors. I know it's a lot to follow. You need like a mafia crime family chart here. But boy, oh boy, if Bob Mueller is really going wherever the facts lead as it pertains to compromising the United States government, foreign interest compromising the United States government, and bad actors in these spaces, seems like he has a lot to review with respect to what the Obama administration was doing and Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation by extension. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Noah Rothman. He is the associate editor for Commentary Magazine, and he wrote a compelling piece on this topic, the other Russia scandal, at commentarymagazine.com. Noah, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So what about that specifically, the subject of your piece that I just referenced, this Uranium One deal and the bribery plot that the FBI apparently unearthed?
Yeah, so we're hearing the standard Clinton line, which is this is old news, and it's very old news, but what's new about it is that some court documents dropped based on the FBI's investigation, the Department of Justice investigation into the Clinton Foundation, into Hillary Clinton, and determined that there were quite a bit that was irregular, not prosecutable necessarily. I'm not a prosecutor, so I have to assume that when the Justice Department didn't pursue this case, they didn't believe they had a case to pursue. But what we found was essentially confirmation of some really early reporting in the New York Times in 2014 that a variety of donations that were directed to the Clinton Foundation that Bill Clinton received as a result of speaking fees in Moscow, for example, occurred in a suspicious timeline, occurring at the time of this confirmation of this Uranium One deal, which State Department signed off on, which Treasury signed off on, that were coming from Russian-linked sources, sources linked to Uranium One, a violation of this ethics deal that the Clinton Foundation signed with Hillary Clinton. And whether this is criminal or not is sort of beside the point. I don't think it is. But what it certainly is reckless, rent-seeking, carelessness to the point where it will hand Donald Trump's supporters and people who think that the Mueller investigation is a political witch hunt plenty of ammunition to say this is a political witch hunt. This is there's this stuff that you're not prosecuting, and you don't know anything about this, and why are you going after this when you guys have this sort of bizarre failure to prosecute this thing? Like, the FBI investigation went on for 4 years, and the relevant members of Congress were not briefed on it. It's just strange, and it gives people who want to say that this is all a witch hunt all the opportunity to say so and some justification in doing so. So what I want to know is, why isn't Hillary Clinton's party making an issue of this, or at least saying that this is really weird and this shouldn't have happened, and Hillary Clinton, you've done it again. You've put us in a really terrible position, because this isn't the first time. How many times is this going to happen before the party wises up?
Yeah, I mean, the Clintons being reckless and selfish is nothing new, but where does it go from here?
I don't think it goes anywhere, frankly. I think this is the end of it. There's no impetus to pursue this sort of thing any further, and like I said, if there hasn't been a prosecution to this point, I don't think there is going to be one. Whether that's justified or not is frankly not something I can say, because I'm not close enough to the ground. But, because the Clintons are not in power at this point, Democrats are not in power, there really is no urgent need to investigate this. So I anticipate that this is the end of the road. But you never know. There really is always another shoe to drop when it comes to the Clinton family, and particularly this for management of the State Department.
Well, as you point out in your piece, though, too, we're talking about $2.35 million in Clinton Foundation donations from Uranium One interested parties. And at minimum, it's something, it seems to me, that Republicans can elevate and try and amplify to put pressure on Bob Mueller to make sure his investigation is just as expansive as it should be, if it's really going wherever the facts lead, in terms of people that had curious relationships, were engaged in dubious activity with foreign interests, particularly when it comes to something like our nuclear materials. That's at least something Republicans can do. I mean, they have a political responsibility to try and breathe air into it if the D.C. press corps won't, don't they?
Well, they could, but that would be talking out of both sides of their mouths. Look, at some point, Republicans are saying, some Republicans, and I think it's probably justified for them to do this, they're saying, look, this is a sprawling, excessive witch hunt, just like every special prosecutor is. They always go all over the place, and they're never reined in. And so we need to put some limiting principles on this thing. And they would talk about some legislation to do just that. But I don't know whether or not that's going to be, that would comport with the idea that they should also then say, well, you should expand the investigation here.
Yeah,
I mean, kind of like a contradiction in terms.
But I mean, if I was a senior advisor to the powers that be in the Republican Party on the Hill, say, look, you can't do, you're not going to be able to do limiting principle limiting legislation. Okay, it's going to look like you're flacking for Trump, and you're going to hear cries of cover up. So just forget that. That's past post. Now that we know Mueller is going to go wherever he goes, and it's completely open ended, force him, if it's going to be completely open-ended, to fold in the stuff about Fusion GPS and the dossier and the basis for surveillance warrants from FISA courts under Obama, as well as Russian interests that intersected with Clinton interests and so forth. Let's have it all out then. To do the opposite, do the opposite, go the opposite way and challenge the Democrats on the issue of transparency and full disclosure.
Well, I think that's a fine political strategy, and I think that the Fusion GPS stuff is all lies. I think that dossier is completely lies, and right on the top of the pile of the investigators over there. That was something that we learned from James Comey's testimony before Congress, that the dossier is not entirely discredited, that it is the subject of an active investigation. So we don't know where that's going to lead. That's definitely on the table.
Well, why did the Democrats, and why have they been looking the other way when it comes to the dossier, when it comes to the Clinton emails and then the Clinton donations?
Why are Democrats looking the other way?
Why aren't they calling her out? I mean, she's not...
They have a vested interest.
Yeah,
and this is all part of the ultimate, elephant in the room that Democrats have yet to fully comprehend, let alone acknowledge, which is that Hillary Clinton was the single worst candidate for the presidency in any of our lifetimes. She lost the presidency to somebody who the Democrats still believe is manifestly unfit for the presidency, which makes her even more manifestly unfit for the presidency by definition. They still have not come to terms with that, and to do so would be a crisis of confidence. I can understand why they're trying to displace, but eventually they're going to have to come around to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because it seems like there's a real market opportunity for both parties to go against type and say, hey, the Hillary stuff, even the Obama surveillance stuff, hey, Mueller, go wherever the facts lead. And Democrats, too, with respect to Trump. Hey, Manafort, Carter Page, whoever, go wherever the facts lead. Let's wrap it up. This shouldn't take a decade. Get to the truth and disclose the truth, whatever it is, whoever it involves, and let's be done with it because – on the one hand, so you have what we just described, Democrats with respect to the Clintons and the Obama regime versus Trump. You also have, with respect to these 4 U.S. soldiers that were ambushed and killed in Niger, you have them asking questions about what happened in Niger, and we don't have the truth a week out. The same people that were asking no questions and took on, as a matter of faith, the lies that were promulgated by the Obama administration about Benghazi, and then a Democrat congressman trying to compare this to Benghazi. So, I mean, it seems to me in a land of hypocrites, the party or the person that has any discernible standard and applies it equally is in a pretty powerful political position.
Possibly. You would think that. But I've come to understand that if you rely on hypocrisy, exposing hypocrisy in your opponents and them not engaging in hypocrisy, you're going to lose. That's how the idea to fire Jim Comey came about, was that, well, the assumption was, in the part of the White House, from all the reporting we have, was that Democrats couldn't make a big stink about this because they had savaged Jim Comey.
Right.
And that if they were to say that he was, a good guy in his role, it would be totally hypocritical. Well, they did just that. You know why? Because politicians are hypocritical.
No.
That's how they operate.
Yeah.
You're breaking my heart over here.
You're going to look silly.
Yeah, all right. So in the land of the blind are kings. Okay, I got it. Noah Rothman, he is associate editor for Commentary Magazine. His piece, The Other Russian Investigation, can be found at commentarymagazine.com. Noah, thanks for joining us. As always, appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.